Good evening, my friends. It is important for us to discuss what is happening in Shanghai, China. There are 26 million people on lockdown. Not lockdown like in America where you can leave your house to buy food, medicine, and to exercise. No. They are not allowed to leave their homes at all. This barbaric lockdown can only happen in a communist country where an atheist government has no moral values to speak of. Let me ask you this. What would you do if the Biden administration, Dr. Fauci, and the CDC said your city had to be locked down and you cannot leave your home, not for food, not even for medical emergencies? Just for a second, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the citizens in Shanghai. Now just imagine you were told that you would be locked down for just 4 days, but that 4 days turned into 2 weeks. And just imagine that your children are crying from hunger pains. What would you do? What if you had elderly parents that need life-sustaining medical care, but you can't take them to the hospital? What would you do? What we are seeing take place in China is a warning to everyone who doesn't understand how important it is to have moral values. And it's a giant warning to those who take freedom for granted. Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look at what's happening in Shanghai together. After the Shanghai lockdown horror spread like wildfire over the internet, the decisions of the Chinese Communist Party on how to control the virus has now come back to bite them. Its residents are clashing with the police, and factories including Tesla remain shut. The effects of locking down 87 of the 100 largest cities are now creating a path for crashing their economy like never before. As the hospitals are reluctant to resume services, it has increased the possibility of more people dying from other diseases rather than dying through COVID-19. This is exactly what President Trump meant when he said the cure cannot be worse than the problem. The Shanghai Pandemic Prevention Team leader, Zhang Wenheng, has now issued a severe warning to the Chinese government to stop committing these inhumane actions against the citizens. In a video statement spreading all over the internet, Zhang stressed that if the hospitals do not resume services, the death toll from other diseases will be far higher than the death toll from COVID-19. For example, cancer patients are failing to undergo chemotherapy or sufficient surgeries. Moreover, if this situation continues for a long period, Shanghai could become a massive graveyard. I have no doubt in my mind that the moral depraved CCP would allow Shanghai to become a massive graveyard. Like I said at the beginning of the show, this is a warning. Now, it should be noted that before the complete lockdown was imposed in the city on March 28th, Zhang suggested a target prevention measure to contain the virus that is also being exercised by the Western countries. However, instead of following any suggestions from the medical experts, the country's totalitarian government decided to follow President Xi Jinping's order and proudly executed a complete lockdown in the city. As they were under the misconception of a silent lockdown, the results were much worse than they expected. Shanghai is witnessing 20,000 new cases per day. The government is running out of quarantine centers. The food supply has been massively hit, and people are left with no option but to clash with the officials to save their lives. The situation became more distressing when the local authorities decided to forcefully acquire 9 community apartment buildings in the Jiangjing Naxi neighborhood of Shanghai to turn them into quarantine centers. As the authorities were approaching closer, a group of 40 residents of the community clashed with the officials for illegally taking away their personal property and increasing the chances of spreading the virus in their neighborhood. However, the authorities immediately called the police that surrounded the area within a few minutes with their unemotional nature. Dressed in white protective gear, police started detaining anyone who tried to resist the takeover. Some of the detainees also included an elderly lady whose son-in-law begged on his knees to release her. However, no mercy was shown in their protest.
The police up against the people. Scenes like this have become increasingly unusual here, but then so is locking down almost 25 million people. Head to toe in protective suits, in an eastern district of the city, officers were forcing people out of their rented apartments so they could turn them into temporary quarantine facilities all in the name of a war against a resurgent COVID. But for some it was just too much. Their homes sequestered, their desperation easy for all to hear.
A resident named Chan Ning stated that he was extremely surprised to find their internet connections and telecommunications were shut down the moment the police arrived on their neighborhood. The fear of the new COVID variant has overtaken the CCP at such a level that they are now ready to slow down their economy and lose any growth objective they set. From supply trucks being stuck on the highways to enormous shipping vessels waiting to unload their goods, China's economy seems to be on the verge of nosediving in the coming months. If you look at Shanghai, it is alone responsible for contributing about 4% to China's annual gross domestic product. However, as the entire 26 million population is packed under lockdown measures, the economic experts are now predicting that China will miss its 5.5% GDP growth target this year. Also, with around 773 million people experiencing the wave of partial or total lockdown in the entire country, their massive 40% contribution to China's economy will hit them at their weakest point. French investment bank said, when the Chinese economy sneezes, the global supply chain catches a cold. The trend is worrisome. Now, before we dive into how this will affect the supply chain, let me take a moment to thank today's sponsor. Our sponsor for today's episode is all the amazing and kind-hearted people who have donated to the show. I'll be using that money to create short documentaries that will dive into issues we need to know about so we can maintain our freedom and have truthful information available so we can make the best decisions for ourselves and our families. So thank you very much for helping me. Our first short documentary will be about digital IDs and why and how it's being implemented. One thing I will tell you for sure is you will be shocked as to how long they have been preparing to implement this strategy to remove everyone's personal freedoms. So if you want to become a member and help contribute to the show, then click the link in the description and become a member and help me on my mission to deliver truthful news. Being responsible for producing 10% of the electronic chips for the economy, all 41 Taiwan electronic companies currently have their doors shut. Surprisingly, one such company called Pegatron Corporation is responsible for assembling Apple iPhones at their site. With its branches in China, the Czech Republic, Singapore, Korea, Japan, and the United States, Pegatron is specifically accountable for assembling the last stage of the iPhone to ensure no valuable part of the smartphones falls behind during shipment. When asked about resuming their work, they clarified that they would start operations when the local authorities gave them clearance. However, no specific date have been provided to the company from which they could resume their business. This means that the supply of iPhones in different countries, including the United States, could be badly hit in the coming weeks. Moving on to the auto industry, the Tesla Gigafactory in the city produced around 650,000 cars in February of this year. Nevertheless, their work is also heavily affected due to the severe lockdown. On the other hand, truck drivers are getting targeted at various checkpoints where they are supposed to prove they have a negative test result in the last 48 hours. As a result, around 30 million truck drivers are stranded, which is taking a huge toll on the country's supply chain. According to a resident and human rights activist of Shanghai, Xi Xiaolong, the pandemic prevention policy should be determined by a medical experts group. As there are more than 40 top hospitals in Shanghai that are trusted by the people and the government, all medical staff from each hospital should anonymously select a medical expert who would take sufficient measures in the best interest of society. Moreover, this process should be public. He further said, "We do not believe in the government and we do not believe in the leader's command and deployment. We believe in experts." A retired vice president of a famous hospital also pointed out that only 1 out of 170,000 people infected with COVID-19 has died so far. So such cruel lockdown measures should be eased off. However, on April 13th, Chinese President Xi Jinping confirmed to the authorities that the zero COVID policy must carry on no matter the consequences. With his objective to give a befitting reply to President Biden's decisions towards allowing illegal immigrants to enter the country through Texas, the governor of the state, Greg Abbott, is leaving no stone unturned in sending illegal immigrants directly to the U.S. Capitol. The moment they get released from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency, as a result, the fourth bus from Texas to Washington containing 10 illegal immigrants arrived on April 16th at 7 a.m. A 23-year-old Venezuelan immigrant received by workers from the Central American Resource Center revealed that the reason behind him leaving his country was rising food prices and corruption. Another Venezuelan named Luis Alberto stated that he accepted the offer of being transported to Washington from Texas because he heard no one was going to help him in Texas. The Texas government has also launched a strategic plan to transport illegal immigrants since President Biden canceled Title 42 of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. After calling Governor Abbott's action a publicity stunt, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki sarcastically stated, "It's nice that the state of Texas is helping the immigrants to their final destination as they await the outcome of their immigration proceedings." In their pursuit to spread the joy of Easter, Gullet Elementary School of Texas landed in serious trouble when they innocently allowed an Easter bunny to enter their school premises. After getting close to every student, the bunny handed out colorful plastic Easter eggs to every student. However, when the kids decided to open it, they were astonished to find condoms. Soon the school authorities, smiling after seeing him spreading joy, realized the situation and directed him off the school premises. The stubborn bunny was not in the mood to give up, so he decided to stand on the public sidewalk outside the school premises and handed out eggs to every student who passed by, and those eggs had condoms in them. When the investigation was carried out, it was found that the Easter bunny was none other than a parent of a student studying in the same school. Feeling guilty about allowing an unknown Easter bunny on the premises, the school principal, Tammy Thompson, issued a letter to every parent stating, "This afternoon during dismissal, a Gullet parent visiting campus dressed as the Easter bunny and handed out plastic eggs. Some of those eggs contained candy, and some students were also given unopened condoms. Please know that this was not a planned event nor sanctioned by the school, and we have spoken with the parent about the inappropriate nature of their activity. We value parent participation and always request that you work with campus staff to best support our students." This unacceptable action of a parent also forced the Austin Independent School District to update their safety measures to ensure no such action arises in the future. The district is also discussing with the local police department to take sufficient measures against the parent who was handing out condoms. In 2021, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis proudly signed legislation that banned the controversial concept of teaching critical race theory in Florida schools. An executive order coded 1932 was also passed to ensure the publishers of textbooks followed the legislation immediately so that no student could label the United States as a racist country. However, after Florida Education Commissioner Richard Corcoran decided to review K-12 mathematics textbooks randomly, they were astonished to find complete disregard by the publishers for the executive order. Soon, the Florida Department of Education rejected 54 out of the 132 textbooks as they failed to meet Florida's K-12 curriculum standards. The grounds for rejecting the textbooks were the illegal inclusion of the concept of critical race theory, Common Core, and the unsolicited addition of social-emotional learning in mathematics that encouraged the students to adopt unsolicited strategies to reach the answer. The department was also astonished that 71% of the rejected textbooks blatantly didn't adapt to the Florida standards and included prohibited topics. The discovery immediately received heavy response from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He said, "In Florida, we are taking a stand against the state-sanctioned racism that is critical race theory. It seems that some publishers attempted to slap a coat of paint on an old house built on the foundation of the Common Core and indoctrinating concepts like race essentialism. We won't allow Florida tax dollars to be spent teaching kids to hate our country or to hate each other." The department also expressed outrage over violating publishers who openly ignored clear communication of the executive order and attempted to slip rebranded instructional materials based on Common Core standards into Florida classrooms. If we rewind to 2020, Florida officially replaced the Common Core standard with benchmarks for excellent student thinking, also called BEST standards, which uses a simplified approach to reaching a correct answer, irrespective of the method used by the student. In other words, students will not lose any points if their method helps them reach a correct answer. In contrast, students and parents have criticized Common Core math for forcing students to master new experimental techniques to solve the same math problem, which also allowed teachers to create confusing or non-practical questions and cause frustration in the minds of students. A period of 3 years expiring in 2023 is also given to every school district to familiarize its teachers with the new standards. Furthermore, as public schools in Florida are prohibited from teaching concepts that make a student feel guilty or ashamed of himself for being a particular race, Florida parents have the absolute right to sue the school districts that encourage such concepts and also recover attorney fees from them. And that's it for today, my friends. Don't forget, like and share, and most importantly, join our member site and support the mission to deliver truthful information. I rather depend on the generosity of you, people I can trust, than ever be dependent on YouTube again. Thank you all for spending time with me, and I'll see you next time.